Welcome, welcome. Thank you for tuning in to Her Story. I'm Kimberly Pinkston, your host, and tonight's guest is author, CEO, and she's a breakthrough coach. And her name is Reba Bell, Coach Reba Bell. She has an amazing story of being an overcomer and a survivor of domestic violence. She does one-on-one coaching called Ashes to Beauty, where she does one-on-one coaching with you individually to help you heal through the process. She has a book on Amazon.com called A Blessing in Disguise. And I urge you all, please read her amazing story. I'm telling you, it's incredible. It's life changing. And it's so open and it's so honest. And that's one of the things that I love about her. I mean, she just does her thing. She tells the truth and she shares it. And hopefully it will help some women along and some men along the journey today. So help me welcome my amazing and beautiful guest, Miss Mrs. Reba Bell. She's coming in now. There she is. Hey, girl. It's good to see you. Good to see you. I'm sorry we had a little faux pas about the time zones, but
It's
I don't know why I think everybody is in Atlanta. Okay.
it's okay. I have two sisters that live there, so I understand.
Okay. Okay. Good. So, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are most welcome, most welcome. So let's just start to dive right in and tell us about yourself and how you got on this path. And first of all, tell us about what is domestic violence. I mean, a lot of us know, but some people don't. And if they don't, then God bless them for never having to experience such a thing, you know?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked because a lot of people I've realized they think domestic violence is just physical abuse. And domestic violence stands for mental abuse, emotional abuse. I am dealing with helping a client right now with financial abuse because a lot of people don't know domestic violence is financial abuse too. So we talked about physical, emotional, mental, and financial. So those are the four most important factors. And sometimes in domestic violence relationships, whether it's a parent or a spouse, sometimes we don't look at it as because they're not hitting me that we're in an abusive relationship. So
Wow. Well, I read the book
thank you.
and it was one of those books you read that you just can't stop. You got to go all the way through. You know what I mean? You
Well,
got to go
thank
all
you.
the way through. So I read the book, and we're going to talk about that because there's a lot of healing in this book that's going on. So I'm going to start at the introduction, and when I start to think about my life and past experiences, and what comes to mind is that I've always been told that I have a calling on my life, starting from the early age of 3 months. I was like, wow, and that you've had nearly 5 near-death experiences. Girl,
Yeah.
talk about that and how you overcame that.
Well, okay, so when I talk about I have a call on my life, of course all the stories were told from my mom.
Mhm.
Of course, okay, at 3 months, most people back in the 80s, I was born in 83, so most people don't talk about meningitis. Meningitis is a known thing and it's a
Yeah.
bacterial thing. But back in the 80s and before that, when people had meningitis, they died. And so I have a story where I had bacterial meningitis at 3 months and was in a hospital. And they told my mother I wasn't going to survive. And pretty much the doctors always come back to my mom saying, I don't know how she made it. And I survived. Then at 6 months, I had failure to thrive. That was another thing back in the 80s. Failure to thrive is just pretty much anything that you can't mentally function with when your baby is born. When you know how you do the 6 months in 1 year checkup. Well, by me having meningitis, they was basically saying that it was affecting my brain function and everything else. And so I might not be able to do this and that, all the doctor things that they tell you. And I came
Oh,
out
God.
over that, overcome that.
Yes, yes.
And at the age of 7, I got hit by a car and I broke my entire pelvic. I broke my left leg and half my right leg. And they told my mother I wouldn't be able to walk again. And if I do walk again, I walk with a limp. Where neither is true.
Wow.
By the age of 12, 13, I was going into, I think, 8th grade. I had a spider bite on my hand. On my stomach. Well, I didn't know it was a spider bite. And so I thought it was a mosquito. You know, it's summertime. You think it's a mosquito bite. And of course, you're a kid. You're scratching it, but you're not telling your parent about it. One day I woke up and I couldn't walk. And and I'm crying like, Mommy, my legs, something wrong with my legs. I'm young. Yeah. And she raised up my shirt and she said, why you not tell me? They rushed me to the hospital. I had to have immediate surgery. They told my mom that if I waited one more day because the poison from the spider bite was taking over my body. So that's what like my legs was getting paralyzed. So they had to suck all the poison out. I still had a scar to this day on my stomach from the surgery. That I would have died. One more day I would have died. Wow. And then the other occurrences when I had got into my first physical abuse relationship. So that was it. That's 5.
Wow. Wow, girl. Well, God truly had a plan for you. You were still here to tell the story. Okay? Okay. Now, in your book, you talk about the first chapter, forgiving yourself. And you said forgiving yourself is like the hardest thing that anyone can have to do, especially after dealing with abuse. And that forgiving yourself doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. And I like that part. Doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It means you forgive yourself and release yourself from any type of hurt or blame or emotions and reactions.
Yes.
Girl, tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, when we talk about forgiving yourself, because a lot of times we don't want to forgive other people, but technically we don't know, we have the mindset that we don't want to forgive ourselves. And when I talk about forgiving yourself, like I stated, it has nothing to do with what you actually went through. It's actually forgiving yourself just for being in a relationship, or forgiving yourself, not beating yourself up saying I shoulda, coulda, woulda. Forgiving yourself saying, okay, I am a better person than this. I didn't put up the boundaries. I didn't put it. When you start learning, when you start getting coached, or you're going through therapy, you start learning that maybe it was things I could have did differently. Not that you did anything wrong to warranting the abuse, because that has nothing to do with you. But a lot of times we live in this mindset where it's like, oh, what if I would have did this differently? And a lot of times abused women, I have to say, we do think like that. And it's like, no, forgive yourself. Even if you did nothing wrong, you didn't ask for that abuse. You didn't ask to be put through that. You forgive yourself, period, for just being who you are. And we beat ourselves up a lot as women. You know, and I'm just talking about personally, because I know, like I said in my book, everything that I talk about, I can't help anyone else if I can't talk transparently about myself. So that's what the forgiving yourself part and piece is about. And to me, that's the most important part, because once you forgive yourself, you start finding fulfillment in what you're doing. You'll find fulfillment in who you are. And then you'll start getting new relationships or different avenues and with people, and you'll start seeing yourself in a different spectrum. So that's what that is.
Now, do you find that after once you learn to forgive yourself and you stop buying into the brainwashed mindset, because it seems like that is what happens with abuse, and also a mindset of fear, because sometimes, I can only speak from a female side, but men will beat you into submission. You're too scared to go, too scared to ask for help, or too afraid to tell anybody. Do you think that that mindset, it comes from that? And so the process of leaving is terrifying.
It's terrifying and it's challenging. I do think you feel like you gave the person, the abuser, the permission in some kind of way, even though you didn't. I think you think that, but it's not necessarily true. And when we break down on why things happen the way they happen, regardless if it was in your past or in your present, we address exactly why you accepted it. and not because you did something wrong, but what was in your mindset of the fear. Was you too fearful because you had no money? In my situation, my first situation, because of finances, and now that's what I talk about too, because of finances and because I didn't want to be homeless again and all the other things I talk about in there. But it was because of a fear, and most of the time, 9 times out of 10, it is a fear. It's a fear of leaving, being lonely. I want to start over a relationship again. Oh, I have kids by this person. That I don't want to be. I might not find somebody better. So it's a lot of factors in why you stay. And then after it's over, a lot of times we go through this beating up ourselves as the abuser, and we beat up ourselves mentally and emotionally, and we start believing those things that was actually taught to us in that relationship.
Yeah, because a lot of times we don't always tell you, well, you're never going to find anybody else.
Yep.
Like, you're ugly, you're this.
Exactly.
I mean, you just go through the whole gamut,
Exactly.
And then once you get out, you're thinking about all of this stuff. Well, am I? Did I? Should I?
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I had some things that I highlighted in the book. And you said for one of these things, you said with forgiveness, it brings adversity and character. Well, adversity brings character, which is great. And you explained what that means. And you said in an abusive relationship, some you chose, some I chose, and others I did. I was previously in an abusive relationship, some you chose, and others you didn't. Talk about that.
I would say the reason why I say chose is because it was intentional, unintentional. And I have to break that down. When I talk about my mother being my first abuser, that's unintentional. That's something I didn't choose. I didn't choose my mom. And my mother necessarily to me wasn't physically abusive, but she was emotionally and mentally abusive. I dealt with that a lot. And so when I went into other relationships, I chose relationships, whether I knew it or not, that was like that. So I chose to believe what was told to me because of what I went through in my childhood with my own mom. And we know our parents are number one. And we could forgive them every day. Like, I forgave my mom for everything. I'm just going to say that. Me and my mother are like best friends now. But it took a process in doing that. That did not happen overnight. And it only happened, honestly, up until the point of time in me writing this book. I had to realize things. And in writing this book, I was like, that was the aha moment or the breakthrough for me, that I'm like, my mother was my first abuser. Oh, my God. So when I say chose, that's what I mean by chose. We unintentionally go into our relationships and we think we get used to something and saying, well, we think it's normal. It's not normal. It's toxic. Let's call it a spade. It's very toxic. So we think it's normal because we dealt with it in our childhood and from our parents, and the trauma that we dealt with our childhood, we bring it along in relationships.
But sometimes I think that with abusers, especially with men, and I suppose with women, especially with our parents, they were brought up the way that they were brought up. You know what I mean? And,
exactly.
And they rear their children and raise their kids just like they were raised. And in their mind, they're thinking that this is how it's supposed to go.
And I do. And that's what I had to, honestly, with therapy, that taught me that my mother only did the best that she could and that she know how. And then learning about my past and about generational curses is another thing, because I learned my mom dealt with abuse from relationships, and then I learned my grandmother dealt with abuse from relationships. So of course it got passed down to generation to generation. Well, it has to stop somewhere. I have a daughter, for your daughter, and I have a son. I don't want neither one of them to go through abuse, neither one of them to go through physical, mental, emotional, or financial abuse. So the buck stop here. You know what I'm saying? So it takes us to have the responsibility to say, yes, that happened, but what can we do to stop it for the future?
And it's really sad, especially within the African American community. And I say that because the history of us is that from the time that we came over here, we were always beat into submission.
Yes, yes.
Beat, beat, beat. And then it became acceptable, like back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s, that it was okay. It was a man was supposed to slap the crap out of his wife or beat the crap out of her wife because, they're stuck on Second Timothy, where the verse that says, submit. But they don't read the verse up under there that says, he should submit. Like,
And
right
that's,
there.
I was just about to say that you brought up
Right,
a
right.
great point, because I was going to say that we take that word submission now and we think it's negative, and we think like, if I hear that, that sounds controlling. I'm talking about for me personally. When I first got married, I was just like, hold on, that sounds like control. Can't do it. Don't like that word. And
Right.
so I had to educate myself, read the Bible, study, be around other women and people in church to teach me what the real word submission meant or whatever, because I had that negative aspect of it too.
Yeah, because I find it in marriages, like I tell people all the time, you have to pick and choose your battles.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Some things aren't worth fighting about.
Yep.
And then there are other things that need to be front and center. So that helps a whole lot. Okay, let's go on with some of the. Let's see. Please don't know. Okay, you talk about the first process of healing with any domestic violence or emotional abuse of any kind. The first process is to forgive yourself. And you know what, Reba, that just seems, in the beginning of it, or coming out of an abusive relationship, that seems like the hardest part to get past, forgiving yourself. But I suppose when you forgive yourself, it's easier to forgive him or her. And then you can move on. Because if you don't forgive them, they still have that power over you to control you.
Exactly, and that's what I say. You use my exact words when we get to chapter 2. It's forgiving the other person and forgiving others. That's what chapter 2 is about, and it's about forgiving your abuser. And the reason why I dedicated chapter 1 is forgiving yourself, because you can't forgive the other person if you didn't forgive yourself first. Because, like you just said, you cannot walk into anything in the next step and your next journey of life holding on to so much, because you're letting that person, they went on about their life, they living a whole nother life, they doing whatever they gotta do, you letting that person have so much power over you. And a lot of times when my personal thing that I do with my coaching clients is I ask them, are they ready to forgive? That's one of the first things I do before we even start the coaching, because I have to dig deep, and we're going through some deep things and deep rooted seed issues. And so if they're not ready to forgive, I had one client tell me, no, she'll never forgive him. And I'm like, you're not ready for coaching. Maybe you need therapy. I will, direct them somewhere else.
Right.
Because the process of forgiving ain't about them. It's not about them, excuse me. It's about you. And it clears your mind. And if it didn't work for me, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now telling you my story. So the process of forgiving is about you and the healing power that you have to know that, okay, it happened, I addressed it, I can get over it, and I can move on. And then start seeing the other aspects and the positive aspects of life on where you need to be and where you need to go. If you don't forgive yourself or them, you're at a standstill. I don't care what you do. And then another thing is you're doomed to a lot of people don't want to hear this, repeat the cycle. You would get into a whole nother relationship and you would do the same exact thing. Trust me, I did it. And you would get into a whole nother relationship doing the same exact thing, because you never really dug deep on what forgiveness is, and forgiving yourself and forgiving the other person.
So with all of this that had transpired in your life, how long did it take you to get to a place of forgiveness?
My son is 14. When I say forgiveness, honestly, is an everyday journey, if I want to be honest. Being my son's father, he's not my husband, but two different people. But when you read the book, we're friends now. It took me a while, don't get me wrong. When I went into the domestic violence shelter, I remember saying, I hate him. Like, literally saying that. And going through that whole process, like, I'm here and I got to be in this shelter and I got to be secluded with other women. I'm not these women. You start feeling like you're not these people. And I literally hated him. But going through that process of healing and that journey of healing and knowing that other people was in there. And at this time, I wasn't even married. And I'm sitting there in there with women that's married, like, oh, God, you go through this when you're married? That was just my boyfriend. Right. It took a while. And I can honestly say it depends on the person. For me personally, my son is 14. So it took probably up until my son was probably like 7 to truly, truly, truly forgive him. Everybody is different. Like I said, when I wrote the book during the pandemic. So I had to realize I didn't forgive my mom. So I had to do that. And that was up until 2 years ago. So every day forgiveness is a journey, because healing is a journey every day. It's a healing process every day. So it depends on the person. But for me, it took, for the first relationship, 7 years.
Yeah, because I like in the book when you're talking about, you say the first abusive relationship, and you think about your first abusive relationship and ask yourself, did you really heal? Because sometimes, you'll get out and you'll be okay, and then you'll move on, and you think that you don't need the help, you know what I mean? And then here you are back again in the same situation, the same situation, and you're asking yourself, well, wait a minute, I thought I would be able to recognize the signs, but you never really addressed the issue of all the hurt, the pain, and and how to work yourself through all of that.
Yeah, because not to cut you off, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes, because when I say I forgave in the 7 years, that means I actually forgave the abuse, the physical, right? Mm-hmm. But when I got into a relationship with my husband, I got in this relationship with a box around me. And I was like, so I ain't going through this again, and ain't nobody gonna do it. And I didn't realize that's not good either. So the first time me and my husband have an argument, we got loud. I was the abusive one. You ain't gonna do this to me. I was like, rah. Because he looking at me like, what's wrong with this woman? And it was like, that was like a eggshell. Like, it's okay to have an argument and be okay. Not because he's gonna get abusive. And so that's how it starts stemming from, am I really over this? Because now I'm putting something that happened to me in the past, and
this brother here, right?
And now I'm right. I'm like, hold on, you ain't gonna do the same thing I went through. So
what? That is so true. Because I'm a survivor myself, an overcomer. I like to think like you.
Overcomer, that's right.
Yes, you know what I mean. And so, as soon as you especially when you're and you like you said, you got the box. I call it the wall. These boundaries can't be crossed. No, I don't like what this is implying. You start going in until it's almost like you test them,
right,
to see if we're good here. Okay. Well, he seems okay. I can kind of let my guard down and further let my guard down. So I'm like, okay, yeah, we're good. And in a way, it's kind of unfair to them. You know what I mean?
It is. I had to learn that the hard way, though. Yeah. I had to learn that the hard way because I remember me and my husband sitting in therapy years ago when we first decided to get married, and he was just like, I don't feel like she let me in at all. And still to this day, he still says, he feels like he's still breaking down walls, because I even tell people, just because I coach and I am a coach, don't mean I am totally there. Nobody is perfect. So I could not sit in front of you and say, oh, I got it all together. I'm married and I'm this and I got 2 kids and I got this great business and I got these great clients and everything is great. I am still in therapy now because there are things, like I said, with my mom 2 years ago, I had to forgive her. I had to go back into therapy and say, hold on, what am I holding on to that I'm also bringing in my marriage?
Mm-hmm.
What am I doing? So I do agree with you, because it's unfair to him, because I end up, like I said in the book, becoming the abuser. I started antagonizing. I started saying things to him just to see what he was going to say back. And a lot they talk about that, but a lot of people don't know. Sometimes the abusee becomes the abuser.
Yes, that's
because it's learned behavior.
Yeah, and it's your protect mechanism.
It's your protect mechanism.
You really should have been fighting back with.
Yep.
You didn't, but you are not going to allow this to happen.
Exactly.
You know, so by any means necessary, you're just like, okay, let's go.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I trust me, girl, I get it. And I was like, oh, okay, we can really talk about this. You know. And then you say that we don't necessarily have to endure other people's pain, but we have to endure the forgiveness of the pain and try to move past it. And forgiveness will make us a better person. Love that.
Thank you.
Love that. You know, because that pain is real. You know what I mean? It is real, because I find that if you've ever been in a DV situation, and once you get out and you're trying to come back, you question everything about who you are. Everything. Am I really ugly? Am I too skinny? Am I too fat? Is this, is that, is this, is that, is this, is that? I mean, until you really can't be involved in a relationship for a long, long time, for some years, actually. I remember me and my sister were out. This was years ago when I was like in my 30s or something, girl. And and I was single because I had divorced my husband because he was just brutal. And people would ask me out, and I would be very honest with them. I'm like, there's no need of you giving me your number. I'm never going to call you. I just can't do that. Okay? I mean, and this went on for years. Like, nope, stop doing that. Because I didn't feel like I was at a point where I could trust me.
Yeah. Because you have to get to a point of being vulnerable again.
Right.
And any time that you in a traumatic situation, it doesn't matter if it was a spouse or, like I said, a parent. Relationship, regardless, you're in a traumatic situation, vulnerability is broken. So it's like, okay, I got to trust again. Now I got to start over again. Now I really don't know what your history is. Now I don't know if you've been an abuser before. Everybody don't tell stuff up front.
Right.
It's a vulnerable place for you to be. But I also say vulnerability could be a good and bad thing. Vulnerability is only a bad thing if you allow it to be a bad thing. Vulnerability is such a comforting thing, because you will know somebody once you actually get to know someone, and you be like, okay, now I could open up a little bit about this, or I could open up a little bit about that. I talk to a lot of people and say, I give credit where credit is due. And honestly, if it wasn't for my husband, I wouldn't be the woman that I am now in Christ, I'll say, because of him. And not just because, of course I had a relationship with God.
Right.
But when me and my husband initially got together, he was so on fire for the Lord that it was like, I need to know, you know what I'm saying? He wanted to get to know me in a dating realm, but I liked him as a friend. But then it got more than that. But it was just like, that's what angered me. That's what encouraged me. And then it was certain things I was saying about myself. I used to use the B word all the time. Like, you might not want to be me. My defense mechanism. I'm a B. I used to say that all the time. And one day he was like, could you stop calling yourself that? Like, I understand that's how you feel, because I was trying to let him know I'm a rah, and you this nice boy, church boy, you take what you want. And so when we start initially dating and talking on the phone all the time and And then me hearing him tell his personal stories and him being vulnerable with me, it opened me up to be vulnerable too. Like, okay, you know what?
Right.
I don't have to feel like that. I don't have to call myself that. So vulnerability is a comforting thing because you find someone that you can trust and that you don't have to, let everything down or whatever. But at the same time, you're taking bits and pieces, bits and pieces of things that you learned and taking it and giving it to someone else.
So in essence, this is like one of the chapters in your book where it is counseling is a healing process through verbal communication.
Yep. Yes, I am an advocate for counseling and therapy. I am. You would hear me talk about that a lot because I don't really feel like, I know a lot of people, especially in our community. I'm hoping to change it now because it's 2022. Come on, guys. But especially in our community, our Black community, we don't think that therapy and counseling work. My 14-year-old son is in therapy right now. Okay. Right. So it's like it works, it helps, and it is wanted and needed. And the reason why I say is verbal communication is because it's someone you don't know that you can actually go in there and trust, and they have no guard up. You don't have to have a guard up to saying they're gonna judge me because they're doing this for a job, but they're also doing this as a help and a support. And then it just feels good when you feel like you don't have that person to talk to, when that will understand you. It's like the therapist feels like, it seems like they understand you because they're giving it to you on a psychological level and a spiritual level, because I talk about spiritual therapy too, because I just can't do psychological, want to go with the other, for me. But when you're talking to them, it's like a breather. It's like, oh, okay, I can let my hair down. Someone don't have to judge me. I don't have to feel like they're gonna use this against me in the future. Yeah. So that's why I recommend therapy, because it's like, it's things that I know my son talks to a therapist about. Me and my son got a close relationship, but I know certain things as a teenager, like I can't just tell my mama. I gotta tell the therapist because I know how to express it better to the therapist than express to my mama, and she can be like. So I recommend it for anybody, and that's why I say it in the beginning of my coaching. I have to dig deep when you're doing the evaluation with me, when we're going through the first steps of evaluation before I even sign you up on where you are mentally. Mindset is the number one thing, because if you don't see yourself there, then there's no point in you paying me coaching you for 10 weeks, and then you feel like I ain't had no breakthrough. It's like, because that's the whole point of the 10 weeks for you either going to have a breakthrough through the 6-week process or the 10-week process. I always tell people it's going to be between 6 and 10. Wow. But I don't want you feeling like you didn't have a breakthrough, because there are certain things. I am just a coach. I'm not a therapist. There are differences.
Yeah, there's some things that you need to work through on another level.
It's a whole nother thing that you got to work through on a whole nother level. Yeah. Exactly. So that's why I tell people, I might not be the person for you right now, but I would suggest, and then I'll suggest therapy, or I'll suggest something else or whatever, if I feel like the mindset is not there, because your mindset has to be there for the healing that you want to go through.
Okay. So how do you get to stop thinking of yourself as a victim? What would you tell people for that? Because a lot of times you go through these, you go, but I was a victim of domestic violence. Girl, bye. Everybody knows
that. Just like you said, when we think about the definition, okay, so I think the reason why I did it is because I looked up the definition and it's so negative. Yeah. And I was like, I don't want to be that. Right. And I'm such a person that it's like, I don't want people to cry for me and like to feel sorry for me. Right. Even when I go through stuff, I'm like, Reba gonna get through this. So you just know I'm gonna be okay. Okay. So when I started really learning the definition of what victim is, I just was like, I don't want to play that role. I don't want to play that part. I'm a survivor. I survived it because I'm living. I survived it because I'm learning from it. I've survived it because I healed from it. And so I started telling people, stop calling yourself a victim, because it has such a negative connotation. And when you go, I talk about it in the book, when you live as a victim, you act as a victim. So in everything you go through, even in relationships, friendships, you're going to act like a victim. If you keep saying you're a victim, you're going to act like a victim. And every friendship, relationship, I know people that have done it, that you're going to do it. You're going to think it's just, woe is me, everybody against me, and the world is coming to an end because nothing in my life is right. That's a victim mindset. And we don't want to stay there. We moving past that.
Right. So shall a man think, so shall he be.
Exactly.
That's where that comes from. Because the way you think and perceive yourself is the way that you're going to react to that.
That's right.
You get stuck in being a victim, from something that happened 15 years ago. No, you don't need a coach, but you do need some therapy.
Exactly.
You do need some therapy. Okay, you talk about, I love Proverbs, girl. And you're talking
about my favorite book.
Yes. Proverbs 19 and 20. Listen to advice and accept discipline. At the end, you will be counted among the wise. Let's talk about that, girl. Spiritual mentors for support.
So when I talk about Proverbs, on that scripture, I'm pretty much talking about when you go through anything and you feel like, okay, went through it, I'm processing it, but where do I go from here? You start going to elders and either ministers in your church or pastors, and say if you don't go to church, people that you know that give you wise counsel that will encourage you on the next steps on what you need to do with your life. So wise counsel, not going to your girlfriend and saying, I just went through this, and you go to your girlfriend, but if she's not giving you wise counsel, there's not no point, because you're going to leave that conversation leaving the same way. Wise counsel is someone that has wisdom, that you trust, that won't take anything that you say and use it against you, but give you wise counsel and wisdom to take the next step on what you need to do. Because a lot of times we are not an island. We have people. God put us around people for a reason, okay? Yes. So we wasn't born and created to just, like I say, live our stories and live our lives and have these testimonies and just keep it to ourselves. It's the purpose of the HerStory. It's the purpose of anybody else that we need to encounter or whatever. And that just like it's just like the other scripture, iron sharpens iron. If I need you because I need to lean on you, because I may be weak in this time and my mind may be lost, and I get that a lot of times. I'd be like, okay, I ain't got nothing to give. Who can I call? Because I need to be poured back into, because sometimes I pour out especially with me, with everything that I do. I pour out so much that it's like, okay, somebody got to pour back into me. Who can I call? And of course, if you're a Christian, of course, you'll go to the Lord first. But also, God put us wise counsel. That's what I mean. People around us.
Yeah, but see, here's my question to you though. When you're going through, as I always say, there's a blessing on the other side of through. Mm-hmm. But when you're going through and you're still learning to trust, how do you build that circle?
How do you build a trust when you're going through
that wise counsel? Yes, because you're kind of skeptical of everybody then.
Yeah, but that's at the same time you have to trust yourself that you're putting the right people around you. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to what we was talking about, forgiving yourself. Because you have to trust that, okay, when I was going through, and I'll talk about me personally like I always do. I'm in the domestic violence shelter. Imagine, I'm in a domestic violence shelter. They already told me this program is 6 months, okay? I'm not talking to my mom. I'm really not talking to people because I'm secluding myself. And it's like, this is embarrassing. I don't want to be here. I don't want to talk to nobody. So they put us with a counselor in the domestic violence shelter to talk to us, because they knew that we was going to be in this mind frame and this mindset of being shut off. So what I did was I used that platform of the person that I was talking to. Her name was Captain Blackwell at the time. And I used all the advice she was giving me and to take my life to the next level. And so that came with the process of starting to forgive, starting to understand why I was in the situation I was in, starting to understand who I am and who I see myself as. And then it came as, who do I see myself being? And a lot of times sitting in her chair, and this was a Black woman, I kept sitting in her chair saying, oh, she married and she pregnant, I want to be her. I kept saying that to myself. Not saying I want to be her, but I was seeing myself like, because at a point in time, you feel like everybody can be going through abuse. She's married. Why she not going through abuse? You start thinking like that. So I was in her chair really looking at her like, I want to be this woman. I want to be married and happily married one day. And I want to, and of course my son was 3 weeks when that happened. So, he was a newborn, but I seen myself being something else. I knew I wanted to be a married woman. I knew I wanted to have more children. You get what I'm saying? So it takes you to trust you. So it took me to trust Cather. Then I started opening myself up to trust other people, start having family relationships, start putting boundaries up, because I talk about that too. Start having the mindset that, do I want to stay stuck here or do I want to change? And I made the choice that I want to stay stuck in who I was. I didn't want to stay stuck in being a mindset and a victim of the mindset. The victim mindset. I wanted to be different. And so that's the advice I would give. It starts with you, honestly.
Wow, girl. That's deep. Okay, let's talk about Mr. and Mrs. Brokenness.
Hi.
Hi. And you said anytime you go through physical, emotional, or mental abuse, you get to a point where you may have a broken mindset. And I guess that's the start, isn't it? When you realize that there's a problem, then you can seek help, right?
Yeah. Mr. and Mrs. Brokenness stemmed from me and my husband's relationship. It did. It stemmed from when we was dating, and then when we got married, and all the counsel we had to have, and the people that came from the church sitting on our couch, like, why y'all keep on going through this? And so I remember, a mentor of mine, his name is Iron Thomas Cotton or whatever.
Right.
He's a doctor.
You say that.
And I remember him standing in my front room, and he like, Mr. Brokenness and Mrs. Brokenness. I'm sitting at this man, staring at this man. He's standing up, and I'm sitting on the couch like, what? And he was like, when y'all get ready to meet each other, when you get ready to meet Reba, and you get ready to meet Thomas, Mr. Brokenness and Mrs. Brokenness is going to leave. And that just hit me, like, hearing it clear as day, like yesterday. And this probably like, me and my husband, Lord, it's on 9 years. So this was like 7 years ago. And I'm like, what?
Right.
But it
Did I hear
hit me
right?
to a point of fact that he was right.
Okay.
You putting on this mask, this facade, this whoever you got on to say, this who I am, and you got to deal with her. And that's really not who she is. Break it off.
Right.
And when you break it off, here comes Reba. Hi. And here comes Thomas. Hi.
Right.
I do love you. You are a brother and sister in Christ. Oh, I do forgive you. You know what I'm saying? You start being that other person. But when Mr. and Mrs. Brokenness keep on talking, y'all don't have nothing y'all each other saying. So that's who keeps showing up.
Yeah. They show up from time to time.
They do.
From time to time.
Still to this day.
Yeah. But it's not like you don't know how to deal with it now. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like, it's like some things, that are said don't warrant a comment or response. You just already know, okay, let me just, because my husband is a Gemini, so I always say there's an evil twin, a good twin, and I can tell when the other one is around, and I go, hey. But that's a beautiful thing about being married that long. You know what I mean? You know each other. You just like, no, not going there today, not today. So, I love this book. Who you are in God is very valuable. How'd you get there?
I can't hear you. You said what?
I said, who you are in God is very valuable. How did you get there?
Okay, so
I'm
it
asking
goes
the
back
hard
to,
questions, girl, because we need to know.
yeah, I have no problem. I have no problem. It goes back to when I said who I was. I always had a relationship with Christ. Now, my mother had us in church when we was younger. Since we was younger, I always had a relationship with Christ, but I always acknowledged Christ. Let's say that, but I never had a relationship with Christ until I got older. And so, when I met my husband and things started changing, and I started seeing myself and okay, I wanted to be valuable, but I also wanted to be valuable to myself. And so I started researching and studying, and honestly, that was the Proverbs 31. I really did. That was the first book I studied when I really got into the Lord. And it broke down so much, and I seen myself being her. And a lot of times people look at her as, oh, she's perfect. She's not. She's definitely not. She's walking in who God called her to be, and that's the whole point. She's being this being, and she's being this we want to say character, but sometimes character is on and off. It's who she naturally is. And if we tap into who God really wants us to be individually, and find our purpose in life, then that's when we start tapping into other avenues of, oh, I like that. Oh, that is me. Oh, okay. I see myself walking around like that. Oh, don't need to respond to that. Oh, I don't need to be negative to that. You start tearing off layers and layers and layers and bits and pieces of who you thought you were to who God created you to be. And when you see who God created you to be, you start seeing this beautiful being. And it's not, and nobody said that she's perfect. What we're saying is God created you out of the image of him. And so, because he is perfect, you are perfect in his image. And so I talk about it too with, that's why my coaching is like from ashes to beauty coaching, because I take you from ashes, and it's like you're going into a pressure point of being a diamond. Because coaching or anything that you're trying to heal from, I'm putting pressure on you. So, but I'm putting that pressure on you because you're about to come out sparkling. You're about to come out shining. But it's going to be a lot of pressure. But that, if we think about it, that's our lives. That's what we go through every day. Right. And sometimes we be like, God, for real, I don't want to handle all this. But God, like, but I got you for a purpose. I got you here for a being. I got you here. And so you start breaking off the layers.
See, like the phoenix that rises from the ashes and becomes
exactly.
And that's awesome. But you're right, though. He does test you all the time and putting you here, putting you there. Because, I mean, you talk to him like I do. I'm like, seriously? You know?
I do. I be like, seriously, for real. Like, for real.
Okay. And then here we are back at the topic of the day, forgiveness. And the reason that I'm focusing on this, ladies, if you're watching, or everybody watching, because you know what? That is the hardest thing to do.
It is.
I don't know why. Even myself at times, we all have a difficult time saying, okay, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Or I shouldn't have said that. You know what I mean? It's the hardest thing. But this chapter in your book talks about forgiveness is not for you. It's not for them. It's for you. You know, and I just can't stress that enough. And you talk about in Genesis 2:4, that famous scripture that when a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, they become one flesh. Bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. That's pretty serious. That no man put asunder what God has joined together.
Exactly.
That is serious. But I'm telling you, that Eve that came out of that rib from Adam, she's something else sometimes, girl.
And she was the Proverbs 31 woman, but she didn't walk in it.
No, because she knew about the apple girl. She was
Exactly,
already.
exactly,
He knew that Adam had enough sense not to do it,
exactly,
but Eve just went on and said,
exactly,
okay, but it sure tastes good. You want some?
exactly, exactly. So, right.
I mean, and even something else, that rib thing, that we got that, So, but I think at the end of the day, it all works together for good once you get past all of your history through domestic violence, because the sharing and the telling of the story is part of the healing process on a constant basis, because, Lord says when you're free, you can speak about all the things that have happened to you in your past and how you made it through. And perhaps, like I said, here is her story. It's imperative that we have sisters tell their stories because we're helping somebody else on the same journey. There are so many men and women that are abused. And some don't even realize it because everything is not necessarily physical.
I said that. Yep. And that's why I bring that up, because a lot of people that come to me think in the beginning when I first started doing this, a lot of people like, that doesn't apply to me because I never been physically abused. And then when I started evaluating and talking to people, then I'm like, but you're getting mentally abused, right? That's mental abuse, right? And then they start thinking about it like, oh yeah. I'm like, yeah, it's mental abuse.
Yeah.
So,
because words hurt.
And most of the time I tell people when I'm coaching, it's harder to help somebody heal from words and heal from the physical. It is. I went through it. And so I have forgiven the physical in the past quicker than I forgave what you said to me.
Yes.
And I'm still 10 years thinking about it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
yeah. Because those words come like a sword, and they stay with you.
They stay
what I mean?
Because you feed into it.
Yeah, they do. So, you just have to truly, truly walk in the light of forgiveness and move on, But Queen, you have been awesome.
Thank you.
Everybody, please, I need you to go to Amazon.com and get her book, A Blessing in Disguise. It's really a healing process in itself. It'll help you. It'll bring some things to light. It'll make you think about your situation. If you happen to be in any type of domestic violence situation, we always want us to be healed. But please, the book. Yes, girl, I'm on it. Because here at HerStory, we always want to support our sisters and our queens that are here, to help their businesses flourish and get the word out. And look, you can find Reba Bell where?
You can find Reba Bell at rebabell.com.
There you go.
And once you go on there, you can just sign up for my email list. And if you sign up from your show, if you say you and your show watch from your show, I'll give you my new book, From Ashes to Beauty. It's my autobiography for free.
Girl.
So all you have to do is sign up for my email list at rebabell.com.
Oh, well, now we got 2 books to go and get. Can they get Ashes to Beauty on Amazon now?
Yeah, no, Ashes to Beauty, I just give out for free. It's not on Amazon, but you can get Blessing in Disguise on Amazon. But if you sign up for my email list on rebabell.com, you get Ashes to Beauty for free.
Okay, y'all. Well, look, go to rebabell.com and sign up and get the Queen's book, okay? Let's support her. Let's make this happen, okay? Because we're all here to do one thing: lift each other up and help each other out. You don't get your blessings by how people treat you; is how you treat them.
That's
so
right.
Let's go, y'all. Wait, thank you so much for sharing your story. Love you so much for that. Sorry about the time zone mix-up, girl, but next time I'll know, okay?
Hey, we gotta stay ready. We stay ready.
Yes,
no problem.
Okay.
I'm already ready.
I have so enjoyed the conversation with you, and I'm sure that we have helped some people along the way, and that is what it is all about. So again, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Have a blessed evening, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you guys for watching.
Oh, you were awesome, girl. Good night.
Good night.
Hey, everybody. I am Kimberly Pinkston with HerStory, and I hope that you enjoyed tonight's episode with the Breakthrough Coach, Reba Bell. She was awesome, and I love her honesty with her telling her story. Please go to rebabell.com, sign up, get the free book, and also support this queen. Go to amazon.com and buy the book A Blessing in Disguise, which will help you through your crisis with domestic violence. Again, I'm Kimberly Pinkston with HerStory. We love you. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and most of all, stay safe. Love you guys. See you next week. Good night.